Yes! I made it! What's today's date?
September 22nd, 2011. Who are you?
Never mind that. What the heck is it? Get this out of here.
My TV.
Shut up. Get ready to experience peak.
What does that even mean?
24 hours later.
Pretty peak, right? Dark Souls has completely changed the way I look at video games and why I even enjoy them. Now, it should go without saying, I will spoil almost everything this game has to offer. I know that the game is older than some of you watching this video, but I believe this game is better played with no guidance or knowledge whatsoever, because this is truly one of the greatest experiences I've ever had playing a video game. Released in 2011, Dark Souls was basically the game mechanics sequel to Demon Souls. 2011 was an iconic year for gaming, as a lot of the releases that year were just continuations of franchises that were already established, and for other franchise games that would be released over and over 10 years later. At the time, gaming was in a weird place of becoming less casual and less cinematic, instead trading it for more challenging gameplay mechanics that From Software pretty much monopolized at the time. And because of that, I was intimidated to even try Dark Souls. But then Elden Ring was revealed at E3 2019 with a bunch of praise and hype from the crowd. Meanwhile, I was just thinking, nah, it's gonna be like Dark Souls, I'm not gonna play it. That was until...
is Elden Ring!
If you haven't watched my Elden Ring video, it basically describes my whole experience as to why I bought it and eventually loved it. But to put it short, once I experienced everything Elden Ring had to offer, I wanted more. And so I looked through the catalog that FromSoft had to discover not only Dark Souls, but other games like Sekiro and Armored Core. I've already made videos on both of these games, and my experience between them can be narrowed down to one word.
It was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
And so that brings us to where we are today. I finally decided to sit down and play Dark Souls, and man, praise the sun.
The dark sign brands the undead, and in this land, the undead are corralled and led to the north, where they are locked away to await the end of the world. This is your fate.
Dark Souls is a very challenging and unforgiving video game, with challenging gameplay that fans of the series refer to as difficult but fair.
My ass!
Breaking down the basic gameplay mechanics of Dark Souls will effectively break down the rest of the franchise minus Sekiro. Whenever I was first analyzing the gameplay mechanics of Dark Souls, I wanted to relate it to Elden Ring. But come to find out, the reason why Elden Ring's mechanics are so good is because of Dark Souls. It basically laid the foundation in every game after. But for those who don't know and want to try Dark Souls, here's what I can tell you. The combat has a lot of depth, with every weapon type having its own moveset and some armor that can only be worn if you have enough endurance. To put it simply though, literally almost every build is viable in this game, especially strength.
I'm gonna f***ing kill you! Man, shut
Honestly, I think the combat that's present in early Dark Souls is where it truly shines. You have to anticipate enemy attacks and their movement, because charging and swinging with your sword will probably not win you the fight. And with the amount of enemy variety here, you're probably gonna die a couple times, at least to the Black Knights. But once you get familiar enough with the enemy moveset and just do your regular pattern recognition, you can beat them without even taking a hit. Or you could just parry. When done properly, your character build provides a sense of satisfaction and pride, to the point where you've upgraded your build so far that yes, Dark Souls is still a hard game, but it's not a this is bullshit sense, because you can always find more upgrades and upgrade equipment to make the fight just a little bit easier, like upgrading your Estus Flask with the Firekeeper Souls. For those who've only played Elden Ring, it's basically the Sacred Tears. Now I know I'm talking about stuff that's already well known amongst veterans and even new players of the Souls genre. I just think it's interesting to see how far FromSoft has come since Dark Souls. In Elden Ring, the build crafting is kinda complicated and takes a while to get used to, with the certain Ashes of War having specific requirements. Meanwhile in Dark Souls, you can just pump a specific stat just to use the sword you want.
Yeah, boy.
What I was surprised to see that was very common were the summons. Originally, I thought that Elden Ring was the only FromSoft game in the series that had summons, since half the community was crying about it, saying, "Oh, this game is too easy now with all the summons being the fucking bell, wah wah." The only catch to the summons in Dark Souls is often a questline or humanity. The humanity mechanic in Dark Souls is interesting, to say the least. I don't think Elden Ring has any mechanics like this other than the rune arc, but I still think that's a stretch. Humanity is a consumable item that's basically used to reverse the player's hollowing and kindle bonfires. Whenever you reverse your hollowing, you can summon other NPCs for boss fights, boost item discovery, and kindle bonfires. Kindling bonfires increases the number of Estus Flask charges received while resting, going from 5 to 10. So with this mechanic, I basically kindled almost every bonfire right before a boss, just to have a better chance of winning. Overall, the humanity mechanic in Dark Souls adds depth to the gameplay by affecting the player's attributes and interactions with the game's world. It introduces strategic decisions as to when to use humanity, its impact on character capabilities, and the risk associated with the potential loss in something else other than souls, which you will be losing a lot of to motherfuckers like these, and some of these. The fuck are you doing here? This brings us to the enemy variety, and in Dark Souls, it's amazing. I definitely see how they've continued to improve on this in Elden Ring. You've got your basic undead soldiers and rats to, "How the fuck is this not a boss?" all wanting to erase your existence just for breathing. The biggest enemy that I've died to countless times in this game though was gravity. Dude, I don't know if Elden Ring just has a lower gravitational pull, but I did not think Dark Souls fall damage would be this bad. What's fucked is that the game knows this and even dedicated a whole area that's like Rainbow Road's distant alcoholic cousin. What the fuck? What's great about areas like these is that the atmosphere of that area will often reflect the enemies present there. Like in the Grand Archives, there's a lot of crystal monsters and enemies who often ask who you are. And then there's Honor Orlando.
Succeed, Lord Gwyn, and inheriteth the fire of our world.
Whatever you want, mama.
With a lot of Silver Knights and Giant Guardians. Also, I kind of have to bring it up, but fuck these archers! The enemy variety in Dark Souls and how it relates to the atmosphere of its areas is iconic. Like, it reminded me of the first time I was in Farm Missoula and how the enemies there were nothing else like I've seen in the world of Elden Ring.
What the fuck, is that a fucking cat?
Dark Souls does such a great job at this because it makes the player wonder what the end of the area's boss design will look like and how it'll play. The bosses in Dark Souls are, in my opinion, what makes the game so memorable to begin with. They're all huge and intimidating and just make the player say, "How the fuck am I supposed to beat that?" Especially with the variety of bosses that are in Dark Souls, with the bed of chaos being the source of everyone's anger, and the pinwheel being the laughingstock of the whole game. Pretty much all the bosses have something to offer here, whether it be challenging gameplay, atmosphere, or lore. I specifically remember fighting the Taurus demon for the first time and feeling both excited and scared, because even though I've defeated bosses tougher than him, he was my first challenge into this world. And honestly, it was a great tone setter for how the rest of the game presents its boss fights. My favorite boss fight in the game has to go to Ornstein and Smog. Smog? Hold on, let me just...
Smoke.
Okay. Unlike the Godskin duo fight, these two are actually well balanced and complement each other perfectly. They are the mid-game filter as they are very challenging without the properly upgraded equipment, which is probably why there's a blacksmith very close to the fight. And I know players will have different builds to each fight, so every fight's difficulty will be different depending on the build, but man, once you defeat a boss fight like ONS, the rush of dopamine you get is unreal. Honestly though, I felt that same rush throughout a lot of the bosses in this game, like Artorias, the Four Kings, and Gwyn. It's like almost every single boss in this game brings some new element to the fight that you have to consider. Crapper Demon is just fucking stupid, man. Horse-faced looking piece of shit. So I'm going to assume that most of you watching this video understands FromSoft world design regarding Elden Ring. I took that same understanding into Dark Souls and was brutally mistaken. What do you mean I have to actually kill the tutorial boss? Coming from Elden Ring to Dark Souls made me realize how much FromSoft game design has changed. I'm not sure if that's because Elden Ring is just a more open world game compared to Dark Souls. Either way, I have to say I absolutely love Dark Souls world design. I was expecting a bonfire to be around almost every other corner, kind of like Elden Ring has it, but the shortcuts and the interconnectivity of the world is just fucking awesome. I wish I could describe the feeling of finding that shortcut from Undead Parish back to Firelink, because that feeling ultimately made me want to keep playing the game. Since I had struggled all the way through Undead Burg with that one fucking Black Knight and then that one bridge with the Fire Dragon. God damn it, man. In my Elden Ring video, I talked about the consistency throughout the game's world, and for the most part, it's present here in Dark Souls, but to a better degree in my opinion, with every location looking different to the previous one, and the transition between these areas are just seamless. Honestly, I think the way Dark Souls presents its world with multiple shortcuts to its areas is perfect. All the paths, shortcuts, hidden bonfires, and secret areas can make it a little complicated and sometimes throw your sense of direction for a loop.
I'm not good right now, man. I'm fucked up. I'm in the middle of nowhere, nigga. Look at this shit. Fuck you!
But this game rewards the attentive players because it's like knowing the hidden back roads around your town, and once you know them, you never forget them. This type of connected world design plays great with the game's experience. FromSoft wants you to understand which path leads where, and how easy your journey will be if you memorize them. It all starts with Firelink Shrine serving as the hub area, and eventually that leads to the Undead Burg, to the Undead Parish, to the Catacombs, to the Londra Ruins, the Valley of the Drakes, Blight Town, and the Undead Asylum. Not in that order, but even then, that's 7 different locations right from Firelink, but each of them have their own quirks with locations that are never really required to be visited to beat the main quest, but are detailed with the same polish and care, since it's more than likely you're going to stumble across them on the way.
Ooh, piece of candy.
Oh my god!
And you know what? I'm gonna say it. I'm glad I didn't have fast travel for the first half of the game.
You what?
I say this because I'm playing Dark Souls 3 right now, and a lot of the world there doesn't feel as connected as Dark Souls 1, and I think that's because of the ability to fast travel right away. It might be convenient for sure, but doing that makes it feel like you're losing a sense of connection to the world that feels genuine. What FromSoft has continued to improve on though is their sense of scale. Elden Ring is as grandiose as it gets throughout these games, but to see it in a game from 2011 is impressive to say the least. Like just from Firelink Shrine, you can see a lot of the other areas of the world, and that feeling of being able to look at something way off into the distance and go there is underappreciated in games these days, because you can do that in this game, and in my opinion, it's one of the many reasons why Dark Souls is such an iconic game. It kind of makes it feel like Dark Souls 1 is like a unicorn of gaming, with its atmosphere, scenery, and diverse location design that emphasizes exploration, which in return rewards the player with story and items. And how FromSoft presents its story is often through the NPCs and its environmental storytelling.
Man, fuck you, you bitch.
Your mama.
Yo mama, yo bald-headed ass.
You mad?
When there's a fan base for a particular genre that can generate over millions of subscribers for thousands of YouTube channels for a genre that hides over half the background and lore, then you know that the franchise is good. Now, I'm not Vati, I do not know all the ins and outs of Dark Souls lore, but what I do understand is the interconnectivity between it all. Between the bosses, NPCs, areas, everything has a sense of purpose as to why they are there and what they say to the player. Like the side quests and lore behind them are easy enough to understand that those map markers and compasses that are in other games aren't really needed here whatsoever. To put it briefly though, Dark Souls' story doesn't have a lot of presence in the game. I mean, there's a fuck ton of lore for sure as to why everything is how it is, but the primary focus in Dark Souls in my opinion is the gameplay, but I will try my best to describe the story. The player takes on the role of the Chosen Undead, an individual marked with the task of fulfilling a prophecy to link the flame and stave off an impending age of darkness. As you progress through the game's world, you're tasked with basic objectives like ring 2 bells, acquire the Lord Vessel along with the Lord Souls, to then face Gwyn to take his place as the Lord of Cinder. That's a very abbreviated form of how everything plays out in the main game of Dark Souls. In my opinion, the characters and NPCs in Dark Souls are what make up the bulk of the story. And what's great about them is that you're not even forced to speak to them, so you could give a shit about the story if you want. This kind of reinforces that gameplay first mentality that FromSoft has, with no long dialogue breaks or unskippable cutscenes. But I will say, whenever you do speak to an NPC, it's often useful information towards the next step in a quest. And I understand that a lot of the NPCs and their quest lines are usually out of the way of a normal playthrough, but whenever you do go out your way, you're usually rewarded, as it'll lead to a side quest and eventually leading them to be at Firelink Shrine, if they don't go hollow. Lord buffs know what I'm talking about. And the DLC just adds more of everything I've already talked about, but I don't want to go too deep into the story of Dark Souls because 1, I feel like you should experience it yourself, and 2, I'm still trying to understand everything myself. I'm 2 hours into the VOTI video and I still don't get it. Dark Souls has effectively changed my perspective on video games, and I am very happy that I got to experience a masterpiece of a game like it within my lifetime. But at the same time, I'm sad it's over. One can say I'm hollow after the end. Oh man, I'm never gonna feel that feeling again. The first struggle through Undead Parish, the excitement of Anor Londo, and the frustrating darkness of Tomb of the Giants, it just all felt right. If you haven't played it, I'm begging you to go and experience everything it has to offer, because I will always cherish my first playthrough of Dark Souls forever now. I think it's certain types of media like this that truly makes us feel like ourselves in terms of what we enjoy as human beings. I've been playing video games for as long as I can remember, and nothing can compare to how I felt beating this game for the first time. God damn it, why am I crying? To end this video, I just want to say thank you to FromSoft for producing this piece of art, and to all of you for watching my cringe-ass videos. Fuck Bit of Chaos though.